Answer yeah, no, yes, definitely. No, because they're a place of worship. I'm gonna remove the,
And we can also, I want to show of hands for the yes or no.
okay.
Okay, raise your hand if the percentage should be involved in local politics. Raise your hand high.
Internet.
Alright, very few boys, only 5. Okay. Alright, question number 2. Raise your hand if Muslims should be involved in politics. So maybe not necessarily the Masajid, but Muslims.
I want have to say who for yes and no. Maybe some people are undecided. So every time you take the vote, you want to see the yes, you want to see the no, and then you can get who are the people who are undecided as well.
Okay. Raise your hand if you think Muslims should be involved in local, in politics. In politics in general. Okay, quite a few people. Now raise your hand if you think Muslims should not be involved in politics. Alright, no one. Okay. And this is the third question. Now this requires a little bit more of a response. So would Muslim involvement in politics have a positive effect? Yes. Second.
Yeah, because it's important to know what's going on around the world. Give him a mic, give him a mic.
Yes, because I think it's important for like the Muslims to know what's going on around the world.
So anyone?
Ask the mic right now.
I would say yes, because it's kind of good to see like Muslims actually having a role in like leadership instead of like leaving it all to like Jews and other, cultures. So I think it's good to have like some Muslims, showing leadership or actually doing something.
Yes.
Okay, so alright, and now raise your hand if you think Muslim involvement in politics would have a negative effect. Like we need more on one than good. Alright, no one. And this is a final question before we get started, inshallah. Are some religious principles worth sacrificing for the greater good? So raise your hand if you think it's worth to sacrifice a little bit. Alright, no one. So what's against it? Okay. Now, inshallah, we'll get started with our debate. So just so everyone knows, we'll have an opening statement for the people thinking we should be involved in politics. So this would be Yusuf and Ahmed Saeed, inshallah. And then we'll have a 7-minute opening statement for Abdullah to refute it, say whatever he wants to say. You don't have to take the entire time. And then we'll have a back and forth, so 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, 3 minutes, and then we'll have open dialogue. So you guys will just be able to talk about it. And then finally, at the very end, we'll have a Q&A. Okay.
Present your case first.
All right, so starting the debate, I want to ask Abdullah.
What is your position?
All right, so our position is that Muslims should be involved in politics because how else are we going to be able to infiltrate the American political system and get a strong Islamic government in place? Because this is a democracy, we have to put up candidates and we have to get the Muslim community to vote for them. And slowly, we can get more and more Muslims in, and eventually we can get a Muslim president, right?
Yeah.
So my opponent Abdullah here says that Muslims shouldn't vote. But every time I've debated someone like him, they don't have a better solution to voting. Like I'll ask them, for example, all right, you say don't vote, but how are we gonna infiltrate the American legal system? And they don't have a solid answer. So this is why I think Muslims voting and masjids participating in politics and all the above is a valuable thing to make sure that Muslims can infiltrate the legal system. Some people like Abdullah may argue by giving the example of how the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam migrated from Mecca and Medina and built his power base there in a quote unquote non-democratic society. Now, this example has many flaws. I mean, first of all, when the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was in Mecca, he would interact with the local elites there and try to spread the message of Islam. I think this is very similar to how Muslims here try to vote in Muslim candidates to increase the influence of Islam in America. Secondly, I think that masjids should play a key role in being involved with politics. If in the Jum'ah khutbah, the Imam can give us a good candidate to vote in, that can make a huge difference. If all the Muslim community could unite on getting one good candidate in there, it can make a huge difference. It could trigger a domino effect. If one candidate gets in, we could possibly have more candidates get in. And this could possibly be life-changing for the government in America. Lastly, interacting with the political system will make it so Muslims can enforce Sharia laws eventually.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. So, inshallah, I'm going to be representing the side of Muslims should not be involved in the US politics. Yeah, almost a bit of that problem right here. Because, quite frankly, like, we have seen many attempts throughout the US history where Muslims have tried to get involved in politics. And I know this is just the opening statement, but since Yusuf Karim brought up some points, I guess I'll talk about those ones first. He brought up putting Muslims in Congress. And, I agree with Yusuf. We should have more Muslims in Congress, like Rashid Al-Talib, like, who else is there? Who's the other Muslim? Yeah, Ilhan Omar. We should have more, Muslims in Congress like those, Alhamdulillah, very good examples of representing Muslims in Congress. And alhamdulillah, also our masajid should be involved in politics, Like, alhamdulillah, we have maps, very involved in, US politics. They brought a really good candidate, very Shahan. I don't know if you know about her. She was a really good candidate. She brought a lot of good to the local Muslim ummah. But yeah, I think you see the point I'm coming at here is that, and he says, honestly, there's no alternate solution other than getting involved in the system. But I mean, we could just leave this country. I mean, that's one solution. Because, and I think Yusuf also mentioned we could implement Sharia eventually. I mean, I don't know who you're trying to fool, but we know that's not gonna happen.
All right, so responding to Abdullah, the first argument he made was that he brought examples of previous Muslim candidates who got put into Congress and how bad they are. Here's what I say to that. Because of people like Abdullah here, the Muslim community hasn't been able to mobilize to its complete extent. So we only have a couple masjids mobilizing to get involved in the political field. But I'm saying if all masjids and all Muslims agreed together that they were going to bring a strong candidate in charge, then we can truly get a good Muslim candidate in charge. But because we have this half-ditched effort to get involved in politics, we're going to get the half-ditched results.
The amount of Muslims in the US you think that there's enough people in the United States currently to bring enough people into Congress for real change?
Yes, especially in some swing states like Michigan and Georgia, Muslims can truly influence what presidential candidate can be chosen.
No, I'm not talking about the presidential, like the Congress, in terms of
I mean, you have to understand something. A lot of Americans do not vote for their mayors or congresswomen. They don't really care at all to vote. So if all the Muslims could truly mobilize in the community, I'm not saying we have to get someone in Congress immediately. We can start off by getting a mayor and then slowly build up once we slowly start getting more and more power.
Also getting Muslims in seats in Congress and the Senate, especially it'll take the power out of some non-Muslims.
But we have seen before that candidates have come into Congress, but you can't be like by yourself. You're gonna have to align yourself with either the Democratic Party or the Republican Party at the end of the day. Because these parties, they're never changing. You know, they're institutionalized into the country, and you're not gonna be able to come and just change that. You're gonna have to conform with one of either two. You're not gonna come with your own laws and then you're gonna find people voting for you. I mean, we've seen like when it comes to Islam or whatever, there's almost a consensus of Congress when it comes to these issues. So how are you going to be able to change that, especially with the IPAC and things that are already there that can easily sway away any Muslim effort to bring a Muslim candidate?
I think responding to Abdullah, there's a good example in the Muslims of the UK. In the UK, there's like a bit more like a majority of Muslims, around 6%. So when the Israel-Gaza conflict began, some independent Muslim candidates ran for mayor in cities in the UK. And because of the Muslim supporters, some individual Muslim candidates were able to gain decent positions in some towns and cities. Nothing crazy like getting into Congress or something. But I'm saying because of the Muslim Ummah in the UK mobilized, they were able to get some candidates as presidents of towns or cities.
So you think that we can use democracy for our advantage as Muslims?
Yes.
Other than that example, is there any example, like you just mentioned that some Muslims got into lower positions when it comes to city and stuff, but are there any examples of where Muslims were able to do any real change in any Western country through democracy?
I think there's a really good example here. I know you guys all know that after the Ottomans collapsed, a man named Mustafa Kemal Atatürk took power in Turkey. Now, when he took power, I pretty much consider him part of the West. He westernized the country, he secularized the country. But because Muslims in Turkey mobilized and they used democracy to their advantage, eventually, slowly climbing through the ranks over time, they were able to deliver a relatively good Muslim candidate in Erdogan, who really changed the policy in Turkey.
How are you comparing like a majority Muslim country to a country like the United States, which has like 1% of Muslims? Like that cannot be compared.
No, it can't be. During that time of secularization, many Muslims were far away from the deen. This is just an example where democracy was used to deliver a strong candidate in place.
Yeah, but I'm saying right now, what was Abu Ghimna's article was about what the United States. So we need to look at countries, the United States or similar. You can't bring a country like Turkey, even though yes, secularism was very popular there. But at the end of the day, it was still the country of the Khilafah, and it was still a Muslim majority country.
I'm saying that we won't be able to make a major difference if we don't have unity, because we have people like you who are saying that we shouldn't vote. So that's holding back a large majority of Muslim voters to vote and maybe get some good candidates in place. So with the few Muslims who are willing to vote, we're not able to deliver strong candidates.
But you agree that the example you brought was incorrect.
I think it's a good example. It might be a bit different, but I think it's a good example of how democracy can bring good candidates.
Do you think that the institution, because everything here, like, let's say, for example, the thing that Muslims are most concerned about, probably when it comes to the United States, it's not probably the internal policy, the foreign policy, as we see with all the protests that are going on for Palestine. And the amount of trillions of dollars that are being spent on that for the sake of the military industrial complex is huge. So do you really think that the solution for Muslims, or 1% of the population, is to become involved in politics? And we have already seen many examples where all that happens when Muslims get involved is that they give up on the principles of their deen, and or like Do you really think that Muslims should go through this route? Or is there a better solution like going to another country?
I'm saying the reason that we're not getting good candidates is because we don't have the full mobilization effort of our Muslims in America. Because again, we have people like you who are saying we shouldn't vote. So only a small minority of Muslims are voting. So we're not able to bring to fruition the full results.
I mean, no, Muslims have mobilized before though.
No, but not completely, because there's always that sentiment that Abdullah is preaching here that Muslims shouldn't vote, which is holding back a large majority of Muslims from voting, which can truly change the government.
Do you have any stats to back that up?
Abdullah, I want you to show us some stats as well.
You can't just say that. I'm asking about the point you made about the mobilization of Muslims and how it can change the landscape.
I gave you the example of the UK where when Muslims mobilized.
Look, I'm talking about the United States. Because we're talking this.
You asked for similar countries, and
Okay, go ahead.
yeah. When the Muslims in the UK mobilized, they were able to deliver candidates in some small towns and cities. Now, I'm saying eventually, when we get more and more Muslims mobilizing, we can eventually slowly go up into higher positions.
What did those candidates do?
They actually did some good things like preach for a ceasefire in Gaza.
Did a ceasefire happen?
No, but I'm saying when we slowly get more and more people, we can eventually enforce that idea.
I mean, even from the example you brought, there was no real change at the end of the day.
Change isn't going to happen in a day, Abdullah. I'm saying we need to change the idea that Muslims can't vote so we can bring to fruition the full mobilization so we can get higher up candidates in charge.
I kind of feel like we're repeating ourselves, so you can show us help here.
What is the useless moderator?
Yeah, sure.
Certainly, I think she said.
Make sure Omar as a moderator, you need to manage the time, manage how much each one is talking, okay? I know you cannot interrupt the speaker as of now. Because of matters at home, but you need to do your job as a moderator over here.
Yeah, so I think I hear the both sides of the arguments, very interesting arguments. But that looks like at a superficial level. We need to start from the basics. What is democracy? Is it consistent with our aqidah or not? If the answer is yes, that doesn't matter if it is we have 1%, 0.5%, or 0.1%, or 100%. Then it is the way to go. And if it is not consistent with our aqidah, then it doesn't matter whether you're 90% or 100%. Doesn't really matter. We can reject it. So let's just address the basics. Thank you.
Omar. Yeah, I just want to make sure before the comment on the democracy issue, just one quick comment over here. So, whenever you listen to many Muslims, some of them they say yes, democracy. Some people say no, democracy is bad and democracy is kufr. And I'm talking about those who are considered as Muslims whenever they view democracy. If we view democracy as people decide what they want to decide, they vote, is it halal, is it haram, based on voting, let's vote. Is khamr or zina halal or haram? This is not only against it is pure kufr. So democracy in the Western world, whenever they say people they vote, people they decide what they want to do, this is kufr. But what I want to mention is some Muslims, whenever they refer to democracy, they are not referring to democracy as concept. They are referring to the mechanism that democracy is using, which is voting, which is everyone would cast his vote, and then we count. So the Muslims who say, yes, we need democracy, they are not supporting the concept that we can vote for anything. They are supporting the mechanism that we hear to people. Then I'm going to bring it back to the speakers, but I'm going to add a question. Two questions I would like you to touch on. The first one, can you support each one of you, your arguments, but something that happened from the Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam or the companions when they participated in politics? This is question number one. Question number two, what level of politics are you asking for? Are you asking for running for presidential election? Or are you just asking for voting? Or are you asking for raising awareness of our needs? I think this level of participation is not clear given how many we are.
So we'll start with Yusuf, you're able to respond to some of the comments, and then we'll go top of one.
One of the comments I want to respond to is voted how can we vote on saying like things like khamr is halal? I'm saying we're already living in this country and we're already doing like unhalal things like paying taxes and that type of stuff. So I think Muslims in non-Muslim countries have a little bit different rules. Like if we were going completely by Sharia, then we can't pay taxes. That's something haram. We can't pay interest. We can't do all that type of stuff.
Yeah, okay, I'll answer Amal's question, but let's say something like taxes is something we can't control, you have to do it, but you don't have to get involved in democracy. But anyways, when it comes to the question of democracy, I think Shirley already kind of answered it about whether or not it's Sharia. Definitely, like when it comes to democracy, it is not an Islamic concept, as in people voting on laws or such sorts. And I think even like as an example, as a recent example, after the Arab Spring, like I don't think we saw any real benefits from the democracy that happened over there.
Now, before we continue, I want to make sure that we comment on one point that Sheikh made. He asked you guys to support your positions using maybe a situation from the synagogue or so please, you know.
I mean, I don't think there's an exact instance in the Sira where Muslims have the possibility to vote, but I'm going to mention two things that I think are the most similar to this scenario. I think the first scenario I kind of alluded to it in my intro was the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would interact with the elites of Quraysh and try to convert them to Islam. The second example I want to give was when the Muslims went to Abyssinia and they supported the king when I think his brother wanted to revolt against him, and they made dua that he would beat his brother. When the Muslims went to Abyssinia, they showed support to the king there, even though he wasn't Muslim.
Now, I'm not sure this happened, no. This is actually an example totally the opposite. The involvement in zero politics in Abyssinia.
Yes, I'll take it from. Yeah, so the example of Abyssinia is that when the Muslims went there, they didn't get involved in politics or anything. And actually those Muslims they came back to the Muslims. So this was the early Hijrah. They went there because they had to, or else they would have been killed. And then they went back. So that's actually, yeah, that's an example that would go against your point, because they didn't get involved in the politics of that country, since they were just there as guests and they were a very small minority.
I think the first example I mentioned though is still relevant with the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ talking to the local elites of Quraysh.
Yeah, but did the Prophet ﷺ stay in Mecca, or did he go somewhere else where he had supporters?
He only left Mecca when the Muslims began to get oppressed, and in America, for the most part, were not oppressed.
You sure? I mean, Muslims can say anything they want.
No, but I'm saying like we can still practice our religion freely. People can still wear the hijab. People can open up Islamic schools.
Yeah, but I don't think the goal we have, obviously, is that we want to like implement the Sharia. And if we can't really be taking any serious steps towards that goal in this country, and I'm sure you're fully aware of that.
So what's your proposed solution that's better?
Leaving the country.
To where?
I another event.
All right, yeah, so you asked me at the start if it's realistic to get a Muslim a president who implements Sharia, right? Is it realistic for us to go to Afghanistan?
It doesn't have to be, I think even
That's
other,
not the real.
yeah, even other Muslim majority countries, even though they may not be exactly like this country, but they would still be better to live in than this country.
I'm not saying better to live in. I'm saying if we want to make change, where should we go?
I mean, to be honest, the real change will come from the Muslim countries. I'm not really sure, honestly, I'm not really sure what we as Muslims can do over here.
If you're going to argue that we shouldn't go, I think that you should propose a better solution to it.
Yeah, as I said, just there are other countries that people can go to.
I want you to name the countries and tell us what we're going to do in those countries that's going to change politics.
Yeah, that's a good question. I'm not sure, honestly. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so this is the point. This is why I'm saying that voting is the most effective thing we can do. As we can see here, Abdullah can't give me an example of what we're going to do instead of voting. He just said go to different countries, and that's a pretty broad definition and fails to explain to us what we're going to do in those countries.
We could support those countries, make them better, stronger economically and so on.
How?
By working.
Okay, so before we get to all of it, I get a comment from my dad on Steve.
Explaining what you mean by the voting, but voting in a secular country where first we need to understand what secularism is. Secularism is the divorce between the religion and the state affairs. So is this what we want? If this is what you want, go ahead and practice the voting. God bless you. And if you think it's going to bring a change, keep dreaming. It couldn't bring a change in Muslim secular countries. And we have only 57 of them. Okay. We tried almost most majority of those countries, we tried this thing, the voting thing, and did not work for us. So what makes us believe that with 1.1% of the population in the United States of America, we will be able to bring about the change with voting. So it is, I think, is a mirage, it's a delusion, and that's what it looks like. That's how it feels like. You asked, what is the solution? Solution is to think outside the box. That's what Muhammad did. It did not settle with the Meccan politics, government work. It did not participate in that. That was their counsel of making important decisions with regard to the states. But Muhammad never participated. He looked outside the box and he came up with the outside the box solution. So we need to do the same thing, inshallah. We need to work towards the establishment of the Khilafah wherever we are, to promote that idea, to educate the people with this idea, so that we do not waste our efforts with the voting and things like this, and stay focused for the outside of the box solution.
And I'm going to give the mic to Sheikh now so that he can give it to the sister side. I just want to remind you that you can use the Slido and you can also put your comments and questions, and we'll cover the Slido questions at the end.
And boys, please don't be useless يا شباب. والله you are having يعني stack man and Abu Jigna. Don't text nonsense stuff يا شباب. Everyone knows that you are the ones who are texting this garbage on the screen. So please stop. Let's have a good discussion. He's just giving me the microphone in case any one of the girls they wanna say anything. We just want to make sure anyone would like to help in the debate. Let me know. Anyone from the girls' side want to say? Should we as Muslims be part of politics, or should we completely be away from politics, or is there anywhere in between? Anything from the girls' side, or should I give them back the microphone? It looks like the girls here, they do not care. You can take the microphone back, and after some time, if anything comes in their minds, assuming they have minds, I'll take the microphone again.
Alright, so I'm gonna give the mic to Abdullah and he can comment on what was just said and then.
Yeah, even though, I was saying like, I wasn't exactly sure of the exact solution. But I think another important thing that we need to mention is that it's not just that democracy hasn't brought any change. It's actually had a negative effect. Like if we see, if we look just at the United States, for example, we see how the Muslim vote at the end of the day ended up stabbing Muslims in the back. Like the law that was sponsored by Ilhan Omar, which pushed even more LGBT laws, which, for example, would not allow Masajid to kick out a Muslim or like a transgender from the women's area in a masjid. And also we see in all the other countries where there's a so-called, or they have a so-called democracy, in other Muslim countries, that there has been zero benefit to the Muslims, whether even it comes to the deen or dunya. They don't get benefit in either. So not participating in democracy, it prevents harm from coming to the Muslims, even if like, other than the fact that it's not going to change anything.
So when Abdullah said that democracy, I feel like Abdullah mentioned that when Muslims had democracy, it only made them worse. But I think democracy can be used for a tool as improvement. Democracy can be used as a tool of improvement as well as a tool of oppression. Just like the Muslims in Turkey used democracy to get rid of Mustafa Kemal and deliver Erdogan, just like the Muslims of Egypt were able to deliver Mohammed Morsi for a small period, democracy has had examples where it's been extremely successful. But just like socialism in Egypt or monarchies in Saudi Arabia, all these ideologies can be used for good or bad.
Yeah, and I think that the example of President Morsi that you brought is not a good example, because what ended up happening was just a superficial change at the end of the day. They ended up voting, and yeah, they were able to elect the candidate that, not even the candidate that of course the people voted for him, but there were even other candidates which the government was able to push away. And at the end of the day, they were not able to do an institutional change. And that is why the coup happened and nothing was able to change. And the example of Erdogan that you brought, it's a good example, but it still does not apply to any of the Muslim countries, especially since it was the hope of the Khilafah and that it's a Muslim majority country. And this change was over a long period of time. So even in this Muslim majority country, it took them a very long time. And to this day, actually, still, Erdogan is still very much struggling, and we see in his recent positions, especially regarding Palestine and so on, that due to this democracy, it is still very much holding him back from doing anything. So I think both these examples could actually be used.
Let me ask you a question. If the Muslims of Turkey didn't use democracy, would you rather have them slowly edging towards a good candidate like Erdogan, or staying with candidates like Mustafa Kemal for 100 years?
Yeah, I think definitely Erdogan is the best option for them when it comes to democracy. But it definitely would have been better for the Turks if they were able to change. Because right now, what's the constitution of Turkey is not an Islamic constitution. So if the Turks, instead of getting involved in this democratic politics, they decided, no, we're not going to be involved in this system, which is based on code, and that we were going to change the system, it would have been much better for them. But because, some people came and said, no, democracy can be used as a tool for the Muslims, they decided to become complacent. And then due to this complacency, yes, they were able to get a candidate like Erdogan, he has had some, without doubt, he has had good changes happen in Turkey. But still, due to him being involved in this system, he can't really do any changes, any real world changes when it comes to the Muslim movement.
All right, so say it's 1924 and Mustafa Kemal just took power. What do you recommend the Muslims of Turkey do?
I think I just said that, due to democracy, that was their only option. The best viable option for them was Erdogan. but it would have been better for them to obviously revolt or to change, or not necessarily to revolt, or do something to change the system from being a system that's based on hope to the one that's based on Islam. That would have been better for them, especially since the military in Turkey, they weren't just secular, they were anti-Islam, they were actively working against Islam. I guess Erdogan was able to hinder that or stop that by a bit, but still to this day, it still exists to this day. And that's why we see that other party that exists in Turkey is still very much strong and big. And Erdogan was actually, it was a very close election. So based on these, so thanks to democracy, any moment he could change and they could just bring another candidate who could simply take away everything that Erdogan did.
Imagine if the election was 50-50 this year. Imagine how much more it was swayed in Mustafa Kemal's favor when he first took power, when the seculars were at their strongest. So maybe it was, say, a 65-35. So, like you said, say they launched a coup or did anything like that, it probably wouldn't have been successful.
I think, as I mentioned, and I don't want to keep repeating the same point. Erdogan he's the suboptimal solution. He is not the best solution for Turkey. And I think that is clear due to the policies that he was able to put some policies on the table and able to do some good change. But Turkey is still very much a very secular state, and he's still very much tied by the other party that exists in Turkey.
Okay, so, before I continue, I'd like to make sure that we try to focus the topic more on United States politics and Muslim involvement here. And we'll go on for another 5 minutes before we go to Q&A. Please send me real quick. Busy moderator is moderating very well. So I have a question for the speaker over here. Coming back to democracy and politics in the US, or Muslims specifically. Do you think that, if Muslims were not involved in politics at all, we have the same level of freedom or like the ability to, practice our religion freely? If we were not involved in politics, or what would be the difference?
I think when it comes to the United States, I don't think there was any real participation of Muslims in politics which benefited Muslims. Actually, only harmed them, as I mentioned, the example of Ilhan Omar and the law she brought to Congress.
One of the reasons politicians like Ilhan Omar, like all the other like Muslim politicians like failed was because they didn't have like a good Muslim community and Ummah backing them up.
But can we answer one question?
If we didn't really vote in like Muslim politics, we just basically we would have way less freedom than what we have like right now. And also, if we didn't vote at all, then we would just basically be accepting the fact that we can do anything eventually. We're just gonna all turn secular.
What's an example of how Muslims being involved in politics helps us today in the United States?
For example, they voted laws that made it easier for Muslims practice their religion.
Like what?
We'll give some time to think about that.
Can I answer one question for a second? Is there anyone in here?
Yeah.
And I'll take it up for inshallah, because this is a very good question.
I think I'm lost a little bit because like you were trying to interpolate between different country situations at the same time. I think like for each country it has its own use case. So you might need to focus on a single country and then you'll find out like what would be the best. Just like a single statement, like we say in Arabic, السياسة فن الممكن is سياسة is the art of the possibility. So that's the thing that you might need to take into consideration. But please focus on a specific country so we are not lost.
Yeah, I agree, but you brought the example of Turkey, so I had to.
So can you read your question, Ridwan, quickly?
My question was like, if Muslims hadn't been involved in politics, would we have like the freedom we have now, like freedom of speech or?
Give me the microphone. If Muslims were not involved in politics, your life, everyone, would have been much easier, much better. If Muslims were not involved in politics and building this close relationship with politicians, whenever one of the brothers would stand in the city council and say LGBTQ is against our aqidah, they would never issue a statement against him to throw him under the bus. If Muslims were not involved with politicians, whenever you were planning and you and other Tamkeeners protest in Sammamish, they would not be the ones going against you. Your life would have been much easier if we were not involved in politics. But to make sure I am safeguarding whatever I said, if we were not involved in politics, their way, we would have been in much better situation nowadays. We would have not have to suffer back then. Who was the one? I'm sorry, but who was the one who gave you phone calls and started sending messages to you so that you cancel your protest? Who was doing this? He is the one who is very close to politicians. So your life would have been much better. And if you remember the argument that was made, we don't want to have this protest. We want to work silently and quietly and respectfully with politicians so that we would make a change. And then what did he do? Zero. He just wanted to do what? Calm you down. So these organizations that we call masjids can work with politicians and can get funded, and they export a cute version of the deal to us. So I wish we do not work in politics their way. But the question is there a better way?
I'm just here to see the discussion.
What do you thought?
I'll give our speakers to comment on the. Anything you guys want to say regarding?
Abdullah asked me to give one instance where intervening in Western politics brought some type of change. And I want to go to the UK again.
US politics.
Why not Abdullah? You can give an example from UK, a successful example in UK. We can follow. That's okay.
I'll give the example of the UK where they were able to get Muslim there in the city of London. Although he isn't perfect, he's implemented. He implemented some policies that support Muslims.
I'm sorry, but that's the worst example you could have done. Like, out of all the possible examples that exist in the world, she's like probably the most like useless, most like. I'm not very not him. I'm not taking it.
Okay. Any other comments regarding what's been said so far? Okay, very much.
This is just a comment. I just want to bring another example after Mr. Khan, the mayor of London. Another great example from the Europe is the Hamza Yusuf, who became the first minister in Scotland. And we saw at what price he paid for this and what was his view on homosexuality. He openly said he didn't think it is a haram act to do. So that's how we were able to ascend to the throne of First Minister chair. Nonetheless, we saw how disgracefully he stepped down and what happened to him. So whenever you're going to compromise on your deen and you're going to sell out short, this is exactly what Quran told us. This is what's going to happen to us. So this is, by the way, not any good example from my perspective.
Anything from the girls? Do you want to have the microphone over there? You? Huh? You already stand over there? Okay. How many people are actually giving one to say anything? No, looks like I'm here. We're going to be reading it. Okay. So if you don't want to say anything, let's know. How many people are right.
Any comments regarding what's been said?
Yeah, I think that's, Amr is a very good example. So I don't really have much to add to that, but adding on to that. As I mentioned, and this supports what I said about being involved in US politics. You cannot ascend to the highest ranks except without giving up on your principles. Because how are you going to get that support that you need? And you can't just say mobilize Muslims, it's not enough. You need a huge amount of, not just through money and through people to be able to support you for you to reach that position. So yeah, Jazakallah khairan for that example.
I'm still asking for Abdullah to propose me a specific, I'm giving him a specific solution to changing politics and voting, but I want a specific solution from him of how we can change governments without voting, especially outside in the West.
All right, before, just like you guys can now give your concluding statements, and then we will start reading some of the comments on the slide.
To conclude, yeah, inshallah, we can conclude on this point. I think that's what we as Muslims should be working on. Instead of working towards mobilizing towards democracy, is that we need to mobilize to find alternate solutions, as Amos mentioned. And yeah, I don't think it's not going to be easy, but I definitely think there could be alternate ways that we will be, because our goal at the end of the day is to bring the Khilafah back and to implement the Sharia. Whether that means we have to go to another country or not, where we can work together with other Muslims, like-minded Muslims, Allahu A'lam, but I'm not here right now to present the solution. I'm here right now to say that getting involved in politics in the United States, it will not benefit Muslims, but it will indeed harm Muslims, and we need to look for other solutions.
In conclusion, it looks like Abdullah wasn't able to propose a better solution. So it looks like this was a light today. And Abdullah is on the field defeated. You'll be counting for the next 500 days. Astonishing defeat.
Not one example where Muslims getting involved in politics in the West. Not one example, but
those are irrelevant. Anyways, yeah, there was a light today. Pleasure debating Abdullah, and it was a pleasure having him, the most useless moderator.
I'd like to thank all this by age workers, you know. I don't know if I have it there, but.
All right, so now I'll be reading some of the comments in the slide. You guys will have all.
How many seconds, but yeah, we want to hear all of it.
He's just
Six. All right, welcome everyone. I'm gonna read some of the comments on Slido, and then you guys actually do have the opportunity to respond. So if you guys want to say something about the comment, you guys can say it. And then we'll give it up to any last questions, and then Chef will have a final word. Okay, so here's the first one. Yes, definitely the Sajid and the leadership help guide our community through certain issues, assuming they're are good. You want to say it? If you don't want the question.
If you don't want to say anything, just, if you want to comment anything, we're just reading the comments out. If you want to say anything, you can just speak up, but just keep reading.
So I'll say the comment again. Yes, definitely the Sajid and their leadership help guide our community through certain issues, assuming their leaders are good.
I think it's really vague, like certain issues, like I'm not sure exactly how I can comment on that, because I'm not sure what issues the person talking about.
And then is it not true that when we have Muslims fighting to gain representation in the political sphere, we end up getting products like corrupted masjids?
Yeah, I think that's a very good point. I agree with that. And we have a very good example in our local community, in our local assembly, where they were involved in politics and are very involved in politics. And it has had a negative effects both ways. The Muslim candidates have been coming out, have only harmed the Muslims. And in return, the Muslim community has been harmed as well by not representing the Islam in its truest forms.
I mean, again, as I said, a million times in the debate, we're getting these bad candidates because we're not putting in our full effort in voting, so we're getting the half-ditch results, just like we're putting half-ditch results in voting.
Okay, just, I know we're done with that, but I just want. Oh, like,
Jamal Al-Roach came directly up from America. It was Muslim majority country that got corrupted by another dog, just like the rest of the Ummah today.
I say that again.
Jamal Al-Roach came directly out of America. So it's Muslim majority country that got corrupted by another dog, just like the rest of the Ummah today. Influence on the path of Islam. If more people see Muslims being true Muslims, they may be inspired on the path of Islam. I think that Muslims should be involved in politics, but we need to strengthen the right Muslims, not the ones who are sold for money.
For the right Muslims, we support, politics. I'm not sure that they exist. And also adding on to that, hold on, let me, we can't, another reason why we need to, as Yusuf mentioned, mobilize as a Muslim community. But we can't mobilize with people who they think opposite of what we think, even though we're all part of the same Muslim community. From my involvement in some of the local politics, it's clear that we can't unite with these people. I mean, it's not possible. And there's a reason that Salah, not saying like the exact same situation, but there's a reason why Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi, he fought the Muslims first, and he decided to fight the Crusaders.
Alright, 2 points, one is on to, I think Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi is a great example because before he became, the ruler of Egypt, he actually served in the Fatimids court for a little bit. So I think that's a good example by how Salah ad-Din participated in the Fatimids court a little bit more, political system.
Yeah, he used democracy
Okay,
to
thank you. Now, next comment, how do we maximize our efforts in politics? No ideas. Okay, how do we maximize our efforts in politics?
Alright, so let me give an example here. Say we have Sheikh al-Islam Abdullah here, and if we get like 80% of the Muslims in Greater Seattle area to vote him as president of Bothell, I think we could do it. And if that's an example of how we could get a good candidate in, if we got all the Muslims to unite together and vote for a good candidate as a mayor of the city or town.
I think, as we mentioned before, we need to unite. We don't just unite for the sake of community, we unite on the truth.
All right, and then, another question I believe for Yusuf, are we talking about all kinds of politics? So should we be involved in everything, or where do we start?
I think we should mostly start on the city scale. Try to get a good right candidate, not the candidates like Malaysia Norman. Not the candidates that we have now, but we get candidates like Abdullah Azmi who we can unite around, and good candidates who will make sure we focus our Islamic principles. And if the majority of Muslims unite on getting the specific one candidate, and we can probably get him as mayor of a small town or city.
And I'll have such a huge impact.
Alright, I can maybe kind of possibly see what you're saying if our ummah was in a different state, but because our ummah has been intercepted by so many agendas, we can't right now. Doesn't democracy mean that we're working alongside kuffar who would not choose the option that is most pleasing to Allah, like Saudi with the alcohol store?
Can you repeat the question?
Doesn't democracy mean that we're working alongside kuffar who would not choose the option that's most pleasing to Allah, like Saudi with the alcohol store?
I'm a little confused.
Alright, no comments. So do you think it's better to substitute one haram with something less haram? I don't know what that's referring to. Let's see. Okay, no comments. I feel like Muslims have been trying to think outside the box for a while without any real change.
I think that's more around with this.
And running away from non-Muslims could be harmful because, I mean, We are here to spread and inspire our deen among the non-Muslims. So this is like a struggle for going out the US. And running away from non-Muslims could be harmful because we are here to spread and inspire our deen among the non-Muslims.
I mean, I'm not saying to run away from Muslims. And I think you're just thinking about dawah, right? I mean, you could still, Muslims can still do dawah without getting involved in politics.
Did you see how many people became Muslim from coming to the World Cup? The Islamic environment really softened a lot of hearts.
I think it's not related to our experience.
Maybe it's talking about the influence that Muslims could have. If we're more in the public, more involved in politics, we could maybe influence more people and see.
I think this is more of a dawah related question. Mr. Darkman. Yeah, I agree with the point that I'm making is the guys from local city mayors, people said they might be able to influence some people to convert this now.
We as Muslims part of the community, and we are a big number of this community. We should definitely vote because they could make bad decisions if we don't vote.
We are not really that big of a population, and even whenever we were involved before, the many compromises were made, and it did not benefit the Muslims anyway, only harm the Muslim. And that is the model that the United States works on, and it's not going to change except if it's through institutional change. Institutional change.
Right. But the problem is that Muslims that are here are weak and are influenced the opposite way, showing the wrong image of Islam along with weakness. I think the solution is more Muslims and more good influence. Rather than leaving, more should come. But I mean, it is hard to control such a big group. The system is rigged. No good Muslim will ever become a leader in America.
Yeah, I agree.
With enough people, you can de-rig the system.
Exactly.
No, you can't. Yes, you can't. Why would you revolt against a democratic government?
I think that might have been what I was saying about like at the time. I mean, I'm sorry to pop your bubble, but he wasn't a Muslim. He wasn't really. His goal was to destroy any appearance of Islam in Turkey. So it doesn't matter if it's democratic or not. It's about whether it's Islamic or not.
Do you not see the new laws that we made? Public opinion. If you have enough people in Congress, you likely can de-rig it. All right, more of that. If you spam more people, it's not going to change what the people with actual power do. So we start with the Muslims and Muslims. Influence the Muslims, like getting rid of trash community centers that call themselves masjids and teach true Islam.
We're gonna say yes.
Explain what you're going to do to Muslims that's going to change what's going on with while you have power. For this reason.
I'm saying, I keep mentioning the example of Turkey, but I'm saying it's a very slow process. We go from mayors of small towns and cities to mayors of major cities, and then maybe even mayors of states, and then inshallah it will keep progressing.
All right, okay, so
Are we gonna have access to all those comments after the conference? I see some good comments within the spam.
I don't know, I guess, just want to look into that. But, if anyone has any last comments or questions, before we give it to Sheikh and conclude the voice debate. So, Hasuna, okay.
When we were going up, one of the questions, caught me my attention. It said 1% of America is like all those like good messages that actually do stuff. But then, Yani, if you compare like the actual Muslims to the rest of America, you're gonna see it's like a loss, because like the amount of actual true Muslims compared to the amount of like non-Muslims in America, honestly, like what is going on over here, I'll say like in your view, like it's probably not gonna happen because like look at the amount of non-Muslims, now look at the amount of actual Muslims. I don't really like think it's gonna happen if you like actually like think true about what's in the United States. So
All right, Jazakallah khairan. And now we'll give it to Sheikh, who will have the final word.
جزاك الله خير يا عمر. First of all, يا شباب, أبا جمع, جزاك الله خير for submitting this article. We had hoped that you and Snack Man would be part of the debate, but actually you chickened out. You have Snack Man, we don't have a real man. Hopefully you are going to be a real man in the near future. Yeah, they were supposed to be part of the debate. So it's good to see your article being debated while you are playing on the board. But anyway, Jazakallah khair, Abu Jibna, for the article. And Jazakallah khair, Ali, Abdullah, Yusuf, all of you, and everyone who participated in this discussion. This discussion is very important, ya Shabab, to have. You are going to be leading the future, maybe here, maybe somewhere else, but even my young ladies, this is what we're going to be teaching your kids. Should they be part of politics, or should they say, no, we are away from politics, and what is the right level of involvement? Let me say a few things over here to get started with. Do we understand that part of Islam is ruling? Part of Islam to be in power, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, whenever he established the Muslim Ummah, he was the ruler. He was the governor of the Muslim Ummah. And Abu Bakr al-Siddiq and Umar, it is part of our duty to establish the Khilafah, so we rule the Muslim Ummah and the entire earth by Islam. Do we agree on this? So politics is part of Islam. Everything is part of Islam, and some people get on my nerve. Those who say, politics is very dirty. Let's keep politics away from the masjid. Those people are idiots. And I have seen many of them even in our local communities. I have seen even back then during the Arab Spring. When I asked people, let's make a seminar, educate people. What is happening over there? Some people said, we don't want to be involved in politics, brother. So the first involvement in politics, Shabab, you want to be aware of is what? Education. You need to understand what politicians are doing. This is going to impact your lives. This is going to impact your kids. This is going to impact your deal. So you need to be involved. And the first involvement is what? Education. This is one point. Point number two. The current situation in our local community or at the national community. Everyone who claims he's a Muslim, and I'm using my words the right way, everyone who claims he's a Muslim and became a politician in this country, we have never seen anything from them other than garbage. Do we agree on this or not? Whether it is at the national level, at the Congress or whatever, or even at our local level. And they have already mentioned names. I don't want to be mentioning names, but everyone who claims he is a Muslim and he took the votes of Muslims, they did bad whenever they were elected. And this is part because of the Muslim community is not educated to be good Muslims. We are not educated about politics. Ilhan Omar comes and says, yes, I'm a Muslim, and everyone would give her the votes. This is because we are not teaching politics in our masjids. So be aware. One more point. Is there, whenever Yusuf was asking Abdullah, where should we go? As of now, I do not see any Muslim country on the map. My definition of a Muslim country is a country, if I stand at the airport and I say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, they are going to give me their nationality. But if you go to any country, to Egypt, to Syria, to Saudi, to Kuwait, they are going to ask you for the Saudi nationality. So Saudi is a non-Muslim country. Saudi is the national based on the Saudi. So our goal is to re-establish the Khilafah. And once there is a country that says our nationality, our passport is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and we trust their deal, it becomes a part of us to migrate over there. Okay? And even there's a hadith, although there's some weakness in the narration, but it says the best people, as it gets closer to the day of judgment, are the ones who are going to migrate to the place of Prophet Ibrahim, which is our holy land, where we expect our future Khilafah. And those who are not going to migrate over there at that time, they are going to be the worst of the people, close to pigs and monkeys. Okay? So we want to understand, whenever there's a country that says our passport is La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, we go. But if this does not happen, or if we are not, it will happen, inshallah, for sure. Our khilafah is going to be established. But till this happens, our job is to work for establishing the khilafah. Sounds good? Whenever Muslims migrated to Abyssinia, this is an amazing example. They were not part of the politics. You are not going as a visitor or someone seeking protection, and then you poke your nose inside their politics. But what Muslims did in Abyssinia, it was an amazing example. They were nice, kind, and very productive in terms of farming, in terms of buying and selling. So they were active community members. They were helping the local community so that people started to like them. And this is a way of da'wah. I do not think, as I said, there is one level of involvement in politics which we need to start as soon as possible, which is what? Education. Teaching people politics. There is another way which is running for presidential candidacy, and I do not think we are there, and I do not think it is happening anytime soon. And to be at that level, you need to compromise on your deal, like the names that you have mentioned. We are not there yet at all. You are going to be like one of the local organizations that call themselves a masjid, but they are working closely with politicians and they compromise on all the. However, so going that way is very far. But being involved in the community, being nice to the people, being the upper hand by helping them. Are there Muslim hospitals that are treating the non-Muslims for free, and it becomes a practical way of da'wah? Why Muslims are the ones who are lining up in front of the social security offices begging for money? Why we are not the one that we are building hospitals for them and helping them? So they say, wow, we would love to be Muslims. The same way many of the countries became Muslims, when Muslim Persians went over there and they showed them Islam. So they accepted Islam because of how great Muslims are. Fixing our masjids. Before people come into our masjid and ask for money, we need to fix our masjids. We thought it is okay, and here's maybe the point that I just want to conclude with. For sure, politicians, they have their own agendas. They are supporting some of the stuff that is fully against our aqidah. We have to be clear in our aqidah. We have to say out loud, this is what we believe in, this is what we can never agree with, okay? Not to compromise for a little bit so that we can get a free ride on their back. No, if we do this, they are going to accuse us and put some people in masjids who are going to give Ridwan and other actors all the time whenever we want to speak our true deal. We should never do this. We need to be clear. This is our aqidah. We will never compromise. The only thing that I can be okay with in terms of voting, whether at the local level, city level, school board level, all the way up, it may be okay to vote to bring the less harmful candidate. If we think that there are two candidates, for example, running for the school board of whatever school district, we know one candidate is a little bit more conservative. Yes, he has some problems in his aqidah. Someone is way much more horrible. It is okay, although both of them they have problems, although both of them have problems in aqidah, but someone has that much of corruption and that one has much more corruption. You may choose less harm for our community and slowly get educated in our deen, slowly fix our masjid, do da'wah for the people, show them that we as a Muslim community we are doing good job, and slowly, and we establish the khilafah here, there, back there, somewhere else, wherever Allah makes it easy for us.
All right, let me, everyone.
Just one second, one question here. Yeah, whenever there are, here is the question, whenever there are two candidates for the presidential elections and both of them are horrible, okay? So here's the point. If you think that someone is going to be less harmful, it is okay to go with them. But really the current situation, both of them are horrible. Both of them are horrible. I will not vote for any one of them because we know one of them he says we want to ban Muslims from entering our country, and the other one during the times that most number of bombs are dropped on the heads of Muslims. So both of them are horrible in my opinion. Okay.
All right, second, everyone.
She came late. No, her talk was 10:30. If she's waking up late, she should cancel her talk. How come an admin come late? The agenda said the talk is 10:30. Why is she come? Where is she? Why are you late? Looks like they want to hear you.
Okay, I just want to conclude this section of the debate by thanking everyone, Jazakallah khair, the speakers, Jazakallah khair, everyone who gave their comments. Can I get one round of applause for everyone? Okay, so I scheduled a little bit backwards.